Please tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I would love to interact with you legends. Now to the story. I found the baby monitor on a Facebook marketplace listing late one night when I couldn't sleep. It was one of those fancy ones with a rotating camera and phone app connection. The seller's name was Emily, and she lived just a few neighborhoods over. She said her baby had outgrown it, and they were cleaning out stuff before moving. It looked basically new, and she was asking $60. I had just had my niece come to live with me for a bit, so I figured it would be handy to keep an eye on her when she slept. When I got to Emily's house, it looked like the kind of place you'd see in an ad for baby products, pastel toys, plants, a half-done puzzle on the table. She handed me the box, told me it worked perfectly, and that I could download the app to connect it. She seemed normal, friendly, a little rushed. I Venmo'd her, said thanks, and left. When I got home, I set it up in the spare room. I downloaded the app, plugged it in, and before I even connected anything, the monitor turned on. The light blinked, then suddenly the screen showed a baby's crib that wasn't mine. At first, I thought maybe it was a demo feed or some kind of setup mode, but then I saw someone walk into frame, a woman wearing the same hoodie Emily had been wearing when I met her. She picked up a baby, started humming, and the camera followed her automatically. That's when it hit me. It was still connected to her account. I stared for a long time before I even thought about closing the app. I didn't mean to watch. I really didn't. But curiosity does weird things to your brain. It wasn't like a movie or anything creepy at first. It just felt real. The kind of real that makes you forget it's not your life. The next day, I checked again. I told myself it was just to see if it still worked. Emily's house looked different in daylight. I could see her kitchen now, with the baby bouncing a little jumper. Her husband walked by in the background. It looked normal, happy even. I don't know why I kept watching after that, but I did. Every night for the next few days, I'd open the app before bed, just for a few minutes. It became a weird little routine. I started recognizing their patterns. Around 7, Emily would feed the baby in the high chair. Around 8, she'd carry him to the crib, turn off the lamp, and leave the monitor on. Sometimes when the baby cried in the middle of the night, she'd rush in half asleep. Once, I even saw her and her husband arguing quietly in the hallway. I couldn't hear them. There was no audio, but you could tell by the way he threw his hands up and walked away. It started to feel wrong after a while, but by then I couldn't stop. There was something addictive about seeing pieces of someone's life without them knowing. It wasn't about the baby monitor anymore. It was about how close you could get to someone's world without ever stepping inside it. Then one night, something changed. I opened the app, and instead of the usual crib view, it showed the living room. Emily was sitting on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling. After a minute, she froze, like she'd noticed something on her screen. Then she looked straight into the camera. I don't know how to describe it, but I swear she looked right at me through that little lens. I panicked, closed the app, unplugged the monitor, and shoved it in a drawer. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I sat there staring at my phone, waiting for a message or a call. Nothing came. But the next morning, when I opened Facebook, Emily's marketplace listing was gone. Her profile, too. For the next couple of days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I even checked the monitor again, but the feed was gone. Just a blank screen that said, "Connection failed." I told myself that was for the best. A week later, a package showed up at my door. No return label, just my name written in messy handwriting. Inside was the same baby monitor, the one I had bought, wrapped in brown paper. There was a note taped to it. All it said was, "Reset your devices." No name, no explanation. I don't know how she got my address. Maybe it was from Venmo, maybe from the marketplace messages, I don't know. But that was enough to freak me out. I threw the monitor in the trash, deleted the app, and tried to forget about it. For a while, I kept expecting her to show up or message me. Every time I saw a notification pop up on my phone, I'd freeze. I even covered the camera on my laptop for a few weeks, like that would help. Then one night, I was lying in bed, scrolling through TikTok, when a video popped up that made my stomach drop. It was a mom talking about how she found out her baby monitor feed had been hacked. The comments were full of people saying it had happened to them too. I clicked on her profile, and when I saw her face, I realized it was Emily. She was crying in the video, saying someone had been watching her and her baby for days. She said she'd seen her own face on the monitor feed and realized the account was still open on another device. She said she had no idea who it was, but she reset everything and thrown the monitor out. I didn't comment. I didn't message her. I just sat there, watching it loop over and over, listening to her talk about how violated she felt. I knew I should feel worse than I did, but all I felt was this weird mix of guilt and relief that it was finally over. Sometimes I still think about that family, about how close I came to being part of their life without them even knowing. I never meant for any of it to happen. It was just one of those random marketplace deals that spiral into something you can't explain. The weirdest part is that sometimes I still see flashes of their kitchen in my head, like a memory that doesn't belong to me. I haven't used Marketplace since. I don't even like having cameras in my house anymore. But every once in a while, when my niece cries in the middle of the night, I half expect to see that same blue light flicker in the corner of her room. And when it does, I don't look. I just turn away and pretend it's not there. I never thought I'd end up chasing a couch across Facebook Marketplace, but that's exactly what happened. It started with me trying to declutter my tiny apartment after a breakup. My ex moved out, and the couch was one of those things that just reminded me of her. It was too big for the space anyway, this dark gray sectional I bought when I first moved in. It had a pull-out bed, storage, the whole thing. I loved it at first, but after everything went down, I just wanted it gone. I posted it for $200. Within a few hours, I got a message from a couple named Jake and Natalie. Their profile picture looked normal enough, two people with a dog in matching Christmas sweaters. They said they'd been looking for a couch that size for months, and they could pick it up that same night. Sounded perfect. Before they showed up, I remembered something weird. I had once hidden an envelope in that couch. It was during the pandemic when I didn't trust banks for some reason, so I used to stash extra cash around the apartment. I forgot about it, honestly. I didn't even remember how much was in there, just that it was under one of the side cushions, taped inside the pull-out bed compartment. I figured it was maybe $150 or $200 tops. Anyway, Jake and Natalie came around 7 that night. They were friendly, laughed a lot, and even brought their dog. We talked a bit while Jake tested the pull-out bed and the storage space. They handed me $200 cash, loaded it up, and left. I remember feeling weirdly light afterward, like I'd finally gotten rid of something heavy. Fast forward about 3 months. I was scrolling through Marketplace one night looking for a coffee table when I saw something that made me stop. It was my couch. Same color, same scuff on the armrest, same tiny scratch on the pull-out handle. The listing said, like new sectional sofa, $400. The seller, Jake and Natalie. I stared at the photos for a long time, trying to figure out if it was actually mine. But then I zoomed in on one of the pictures and saw a faint little marker line on the back corner, a line my niece had drawn when she was over one day. That's when it hit me. It was my couch. And then I read about the envelope. I felt this weird rush of panic, like I just remembered I left my stuff on. I messaged them right away. I said something like, "Hey, I think you bought my couch a few months ago. I realized I might have left something important inside the storage compartment. Could you check for me?" They didn't reply that night or the next. A few days later, I tried again. I said, "Hey, just wondering if you had a chance to check. It's nothing dangerous or weird, just an envelope I accidentally left there." Still nothing. At that point, I got suspicious. I made a new account and messaged them pretending to be a buyer. I asked if the couch was still available. They replied in minutes, said yes, and even sent me their address to come see it. So I went. It was about a 20-minute drive out to a newer-looking neighborhood. When I pulled up, I recognized their dog in the front yard. I parked across the street and sat there for a while, trying to figure out how to play it. I wasn't trying to make a scene, but it felt wrong just to leave without at least asking face to face. I walked up to the door and Natalie answered. She looked surprised, but she recognized me right away. I told her I was the one who sold them the couch and that I realized something valuable had been left inside it. She froze for a second and said, "Oh yeah, we don't have it anymore, sorry," and tried to close the door. But I could see it through the window behind her. The same couch, same cushions, still there. I didn't want to push it, so I just said I understood and left. But something about the whole thing didn't sit right. Later that night, I messaged them again, this time telling the truth, that there was an envelope taped under the pull-out bed with some cash. I said they could even keep a little if they just returned the rest. They blocked me the next morning. I was mad, but I didn't know what to do. It's not like I could call the cops and say, "Hey, I sold a couch and forgot I hid money in it." That sounded ridiculous. So I just left it alone for a while, but I kept checking their listing every few days. Eventually, it disappeared. A couple weeks later, a new post popped up from someone else in the same area. It was my couch again. Same pictures, but now listed under another name for $450. That's when I realized they were probably flipping furniture. Buying stuff cheap, cleaning it up, reselling for profit. I guess that's fine, but I couldn't stop thinking about that envelope. It started to drive me nuts. I even dreamt about it once, opening the couch and seeing the money still there, untouched, like some buried treasure waiting for me to come back. I read that envelope had a little sticky note inside that said rainy day fund. I wrote it back when I was broke and trying to save for emergencies. One night, after a few drinks, I decided to drive back to their house. I parked down the street again and just sat there watching. Their living room lights were on, and I could see the edge of the couch from the window. They were sitting on it, watching TV, the dog curled up beside them. It looked so normal. I didn't go up to the door that time. I just sat there staring at that couch, thinking about how something that used to be mine was now part of their life. Maybe they found the envelope and spent the money without even thinking twice. Maybe it paid for that dog bed I could see in the corner. Or maybe it's still there, taped under the cushion, forgotten just like I'd forgotten it before. Eventually they moved. The listings stopped showing up, and when I checked their profiles, both were gone. New accounts, maybe new city. I don't know, but sometimes when I scroll Marketplace now, I catch myself scanning every gray couch that pops up, looking for that same tiny marker line. It's not about the money anymore. It's about how weird it feels to know something of mine is still out there, sitting in someone else's house, with my handwriting taped inside it. I guess that's the thing about selling stuff. You never really know what you're giving away. Sometimes it's just furniture. Sometimes it's a part of your life you didn't mean to let go of. And in my case, it was both. I was broke that month, like counting change in the cup holder broke. Rent had gone up, work was slow, and I needed extra money fast. So I started selling stuff around my place. Old games, shoes I didn't wear anymore, random electronics I'd had forever. The big thing was my TV. It was a 55-inch Samsung I'd bought 2 years ago on Black Friday. Still worked perfectly, just a little dust on the screen and a missing remote. I figured I could get $250 easy. I put up the listing late one night with a few pictures and a short description. By morning, my phone was full of messages. Most people were the usual, "Is this still available?" with no follow-up. But one guy stood out. His name on Facebook was Real Deals Denver. He had a profile full of videos of him buying stuff, cars, phones, sneakers, always with captions like, "Don't get scammed, people." He had followers too, like a lot of them. I thought that was kind of weird, but whatever. He offered the full $250 cash and said he could pick it up that evening. He showed up right on time. Drove a black pickup, loud music, camera mounted on the dashboard. He hopped out and right away I noticed he had a GoPro strapped to his chest. I laughed and asked what that was for, and he just said, "Proof, man. Gotta protect myself." I didn't think much of it. People record everything now. We brought the TV out to the parking lot behind my building since he said he didn't want to go inside random places. It was cold, and I remember the light from the street lamp flickering while I plugged it into an extension cord to show it worked. It powered on perfectly. No issues. He nodded, counted out $250 and said, "Cool, I'm filming just to keep this clean, Pope. That's fine." I shrugged and said it was fine. We shook hands. He loaded it into his truck, and that was it. The whole thing took maybe 10 minutes. About 3 days later, my phone started blowing up. I woke up to messages from people I didn't even know. Some were laughing, others calling me names, saying I was a scammer. I had no idea what was going on until a friend sent me a link. It was a TikTok posted by that same guy, Real Deals Denver. The caption said, "When scammers try to sell you a broken TV." The video showed me in the parking lot handing over the TV. He'd edited it with dramatic music, adding subtitles like, "He said it works fine," and "Watch what happens next." Then it cut to a clip of him plugging the TV in somewhere else and the screen flickering green. It looked terrible. The comments were brutal. People calling me a thief, saying I robbed him, even tagging my Facebook since he blurred nothing. I was furious. That TV worked when I sold it. I tested it in front of him. Whatever he did to make it look broken wasn't my problem. But now my face was online, and everyone thought I was some kind of scam artist. I messaged him directly, trying to explain. I told him I had proof it worked and even offered to refund him if he brought it back. He read it but never replied. Instead, he posted another video, this time showing screenshots of my messages with the caption, "Scammers always fold when they get caught." That one got even more views. People started commenting on my personal profile. Someone found my jobs page and left a review calling me the fake TD guy. It got so bad my manager pulled me aside at work and asked what was going on. I had to explain the whole thing, and even then, I could tell he didn't fully believe me. After a week of non-stop notifications, I finally decided to buy another TD from a pawn shop and take a video proving my old one worked when I sold it. I posted it with a caption, setting the record straight. I read the serial number from the receipt and matched it to the one in his video. It was the same. Then I showed clips from my security camera pointing at my parking lot, where the screen clearly looked fine when he picked it up. It got a few likes from friends, but nothing compared to the attention his video got. His had over 400,000 views by then, and the comments were still piling up. People love drama way more than they love the truth. Then one night, I got a message from a random account saying they knew the guy personally. They told me he does this all the time, buys stuff cheap, films the deals, and if the item isn't brand new, he fakes a problem to get sympathy views. It's how he built his following. I didn't know if that was true, but it sounded right. I thought about reporting his videos, but by then, they'd already spread everywhere. People were stitching them, making jokes about the guy who sells broken TVs. Even if I deleted my social media, the clips would still exist somewhere. A couple weeks later, I saw another one of his videos pop up on my For You page completely by accident. This time he was buying an iPhone from someone in another parking lot. Same setup, same angle, same dramatic captions. The seller looked uncomfortable, and halfway through, I realized it was the same parking lot behind my building. That's when it clicked. He probably used my sale as practice. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. He was running some kind of low-budget content scheme, turning regular people into villains for clicks. I tried commenting on his new video, saying I was the guy from the TV one and that everything he posted was fake. My comment got buried instantly. Then the next day, I saw he turned off comments altogether. I decided to stop chasing it after that. I deleted all my old listings, locked my profiles, and stopped selling stuff online. Every time I thought about posting something again, I'd picture that GoPro on his chest and the way he grinned when I handed him the TV. It's weird how one normal transaction can spin into something like that. It wasn't even about money at that point. It was about reputation. You don't realize how fragile that is until a stranger with a phone decides to twist your life into a storyline. Months later, I saw someone selling what looked exactly like my old TV. Same dent on the bottom corner, same sticker residue on the back. The listing said, "Used but works fine." The seller's name wasn't Real Deals Denver this time. It was just a regular profile with no followers. I almost messaged them, but I didn't. I just stared at it for a while and then closed the app. Because if there's one thing I learned, it's that once the internet decides you're the bad guy, even the truth can't fix it. And I wasn't about to give anyone else a reason to point a camera at me again. Now, I still got a small TV in my room, nothing fancy. I keep it turned toward the wall when I'm not watching it. Not because I'm paranoid, but because every time I see that blank screen, I half expect to see my own face staring back from some stranger's video.
Hey guys, really sorry to interrupt. If you're still listening, then you're enjoying the story so far. And if you are enjoying, then please hit that like button. That's all I ask of you. Thanks so much. Now back to the stories.
I wasn't even planning to buy a wedding dress that day. I was just killing time scrolling through Marketplace during lunch at work. I wasn't engaged yet, but me and my girlfriend at the time talked about marriage all the time, so I guess I was just curious. I clicked on this one listing that caught my eye. Wedding dress, worn once, perfect condition. The pictures looked straight out of a bridal shop ad. Lace sleeves, long train, the kind of thing that made you imagine slow songs and twinkle lights. The seller's name was Hannah. Her profile picture showed her sitting on a beach with sunglasses, looked early 30s maybe. The price was only $180, which was crazy cheap for something that nice. I messaged her, half joking, asking if it was real. She replied super quick, said it was, and that she just wanted it gone. Said she was moving on. That phrase stuck with me, but I didn't think too much of it then. We arranged to meet that weekend. She lived in this old two-story house on the edge of town, kind of tucked behind a row of pine trees. It looked peaceful, but also like the kind of place where things echo. When I pulled up, she was already outside, holding the dress bag like she couldn't wait to get rid of it. She didn't invite me in, which I thought was weird, but I figured maybe she was just being cautious. We chatted a bit. She said she got married a few years back, but it didn't work out. She handed me the bag. I gave her $180, and that was it. When I got home, I laid the dress out on the bed. It looked even better in person. The fabric had this soft shimmer under the light. There was no dirt or stains, like she'd taken care of it. But then I noticed something tucked inside the garment bag, a small envelope taped near the bottom. I thought maybe it was just extra buttons or something, but when I opened it, there were photos inside. About 10 of them. All printed, glossy like from a professional shoot. At first, I smiled because they looked beautiful. Same dress, same lace detail, same soft light. Hannah was in all of them, standing next to a guy in a gray suit, both laughing. But when I looked closer, my smile kind of faded. They didn't look like old photos. The colors weren't faded, the style didn't look dated, and the guy's haircut was modern. In one of the pictures, you could see a car in the background with a license plate that had the current year's tag on it. I flipped through the rest. There were ones from the ceremony, ones from the reception, and one that looked like it was taken just a few weeks ago based on the weather. It didn't make sense. She said she'd gotten married a few years back, but everything in the pictures looked recent. I probably should have just left it alone, but curiosity got me again. I went back to her marketplace profile and clicked through her posts. Nothing personal, just old listings for furniture and clothes. Then I clicked her name and went to her main profile. It was mostly private, but one photo was public. It was her, same woman, standing in that exact same dress next to the same man. The post was dated 3 months ago. The caption said, "Best day ever." 3 months. That's when I realized she was still married. I sat there staring at the screen for a long time. I didn't even know her, but something about the whole thing felt heavy. Like I was holding a secret that didn't belong to me. I thought maybe she was getting divorced or separating, but if that was true, why was she selling her wedding dress so soon after the wedding? I tried to forget about it, but it kept bothering me. A few days later, I decided to message her again. I said, "Hey, I think you might have accidentally left some photos in the bag." She didn't reply right away. The next day, her profile was gone, like completely deleted. That's when it got weird. About a week after that, I got a message request from a man named Kyle. His profile picture looked familiar. It was the same guy from the photos. My stomach dropped. His message said, "Did you buy a wedding dress from Hannah?" I stared at it for a while before replying. I just said, "Yeah, why?" He replied almost instantly, "Do you still have it?" I told him I did. He asked if he could buy it back, said he'd pay double. He didn't explain why. At that point, I didn't know what to think. Was this some kind of scam? A fight between exes? I asked him what was going on, but he never answered. Just said, "Please, I need that dress." I didn't reply again. I didn't want to get in the middle of whatever was happening. But later that night, I heard a car outside my apartment. Not uncommon, but this one parked across the street and stayed there for a long time. I peeked through the blinds, and for a second, I could have sworn I saw the same truck from the wedding photos. I moved the dress to my closet and covered it with a blanket. I don't even know why. It just felt safer that way. The next morning, the car was gone. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching. Over the next few weeks, weird things kept happening. I'd get random calls from numbers I didn't know, and when I answered, no one would say anything. Once, I came home and the bag the dress was in was unzipped, like someone had gone through it. I started keeping it locked in a storage bin after that. Months passed, and things calmed down. Eventually, I forgot about the dress. It just sat in my closet collecting dust. Then one night, I got tagged in a post by a mutual friend of a friend. It was a news story. The headline said, "Local man accused of selling wife's belongings after disappearance." It was Kyle, the same guy from the photos. I read through the article like my heart was trying to crawl out of my chest. It said his wife, Hannah, had been missing for nearly 2 months. Police suspected foul play. They found that he'd been selling off her stuff, clothes, jewelry, even her wedding dress, under her account. That's when it clicked. He was the one who sold me the dress. Not her. He must have used her profile before deleting it. I felt sick. I thought about how he asked for the dress back, how he found me, maybe even came to my place. I called the police the next day and told them everything. They came by, took the dress, the photos, the messages, everything. They didn't tell me much, just thanked me and said I did the right thing. I never found out what really happened to her. The news stopped covering it after a while. But sometimes I still think about that day, how normal it all felt when I picked it up. Just another online deal. Now, every time I scroll through Marketplace, I look at the seller's names a little longer. I check the photos twice, because you never really know whose hands something's passed through before it gets to you. And sometimes it's better not to find out. I'll start by saying I'm not some tech genius or anything, but I'm not dumb either. I know how to factory reset a phone. I've done it a dozen times. I've sold old phones before without any issues. So when I listed my old Samsung for $180 on Marketplace, I wasn't worried. I had already wiped it clean, logged out of everything, made sure it was like new. The phone wasn't broken or anything, I just upgraded. It was sitting in my drawer for months, and I figured I might as well get some cash out of it. I posted a few pics, mentioned that it was unlocked and fully reset, and waited. Within an hour, I got a message from some guy named Eric. His profile looked normal enough, picture of him at a car show, a few posts about his dog. He said he wanted it for his little brother and asked if he could meet that night. We met in the parking lot of a Target around 8. I don't like meeting people at my place, so public spots are my thing. He showed up on time, checked the phone, and handed me $180 in cash. Easy. He seemed chill. We talked a bit about phones and stuff, and then he left. I went home feeling good, like I just made an easy sale. Everything was fine for a couple days. Then I got a message from a random number. It said, "Nice pics, man." I didn't recognize the number, but I thought maybe it was a friend joking around. Then another message came in, a photo. My heart stopped. It was a picture of me. From my phone. One that I'd taken months ago and deleted. At first, I tried to convince myself that maybe I'd uploaded it somewhere, or it was still in some cloud backup. The photo had a timestamp from before I reset the phone. There was no way he should have had it. I texted back, "Who is this?" The reply came fast. "You sold me this phone, remember?" My stomach dropped. It was Eric. He sent another message, this time with a whole folder of thumbnails, photos I'd read years ago, screenshots, even a few pictures of my ex. Stuff I thought was long gone. He said he'd recovered them easily. Then came the part that made my blood run cold. He said, "If you don't want these shared, send $300 by tonight." I sat there staring at my phone, trying to figure out if this was real. Could he actually post them somewhere? Could he see my other stuff? I factory reset that phone. I was sure I had. I even looked up videos to make sure I'd done it right. But apparently, if you don't erase encrypted data properly, some files can still be recovered. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't going to pay him. That felt like feeding the problem. But I also didn't want my private stuff floating around online. I ignored the message, thinking maybe he'd give up. He didn't. The next day, he sent another text. This time it was a collage of more photos. Some were harmless, just me hanging out, but others were personal, stuff no one else should have seen. He added, "Last chance before I send these to your friends." That line made my heart pound because somehow he found my Facebook. He sent a screenshot of my profile like proof. I finally responded and told him I was reporting him to the police. He laughed. Literally texted lol. Then he said, "Good luck, I'm using a burner anyway." I didn't sleep that night. I changed all my passwords, deleted my socials, and backed up what I could. I even called my phone carrier, asked if there was any way to trace his number, but they said unless there was an official report, they couldn't do anything. So I went to the police the next day. I told them everything, showed them the texts, even gave them the receipt from the sale. The officer I talked to said they'd file it, but didn't seem too confident about finding him. Apparently, stuff like this happens more often than people think. Days turned into weeks and nothing happened. Then one night, around 2 a.m., I got a message from another number. "You shouldn't have gone to the cops." I froze. It wasn't just a threat. It came with a video file. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I deleted it right away, blocked the number, and sat in silence for a long time, trying to figure out how far this guy could really go. I thought about changing my number or moving or something, but that felt dramatic. So I tried to go on like normal. But then my ex texted me, asking if I'd sent her something weird. I asked what she meant, and she said someone messaged her on Instagram from a fake account, sending her one of our old photos together. That's when I lost it. I drove straight to the police station again, showed them the messages, told them now it was involving someone else. This time they took it seriously. They said they'd get a cyber unit involved and told me not to respond to anything else. A few days later, they called back. They said they traced some of the activity to an email that matched another report from someone who sold a phone online. Apparently, he'd been doing this to a bunch of people, buying used phones, restoring deleted data, and blackmailing them for money. They told me to hang tight while they worked on it. I didn't hear anything for a while, but slowly the messages stopped. No new numbers, no threats, nothing. I figured maybe they caught him or he moved on to someone else. Either way, I didn't care. I was just glad it was over. It's been almost a year now, and I still can't look at my phone the same way. Every time I sell something or give away an old device, I think about him. The way he said, "Nice pics, man," like it was a joke. I think about how easy it was for him to get inside something I thought was clean, how he used it against me like it was nothing. Now, I don't sell my old phones anymore. I destroy them, literally. I take out the Siam, smash the thing with a hammer, and toss the pieces in different trash bags. My friends laugh when I tell them, but they don't get it. The internet makes you forget that your stuff doesn't really disappear. It just hides until someone smart enough digs it up. Sometimes I still get texts from random numbers, and even though they're probably spam, I hesitate before opening them. Because part of me still expects to see another message that says, "Nice pics, man." I've always been into flipping furniture. Nothing fancy, just grabbing old stuff from yard sales, cleaning it up, and selling it for a little profit. I don't make a ton, but it's good side money. I've done it enough that I know which pieces are worth grabbing, and this one table I found last spring looked like an easy win. It was this big wooden dining table I saw at an estate sale a few towns over. The house looked kind of run down from the outside, but inside it was packed with old furniture, boxes, random antiques. The table caught my eye right away because it had that solid, heavy feel. You can tell when something's made right. The lady running the sale said everything had to go by the end of the weekend. I asked how much for the table, and she said $60 if I could haul it out myself. That was a steal. So I paid, loaded it in my truck, and brought it home. It needed work, had a few scratches, water rings, and one of the legs was a little loose. I spent a couple of days sanding it down, tightening the bolts, and giving it a new coat of dark walnut stain. When it was done, it looked amazing. I figured I could easily sell it for $200. I listed it on Marketplace with a few pictures and a simple caption. Refinished solid wood dining table, great condition, $200. I didn't think much of it. Just another item flipped. A day later, I got a message from a woman named Claire. She said the table looked exactly like one her mom used to have. She even asked where I got it. I told her I bought it at an estate sale over in Willow Creek. Her next message came quick. She asked if the house was yellow with white trim and a big oak tree in front. I said yeah, that sounded about right. Then she asked if there was a little nick on the back edge shaped like a crescent moon. I checked, and sure enough, there it was. When I told her that, she replied, "That's my mom's table." I just stared at the screen for a minute. I didn't know what to say. She said her mom had passed away a few months back, and the estate sale was handled by some distant relatives. Apparently, they sold almost everything before she even got a chance to look through it. She said that table was her mom's favorite thing in the house. They used to sit at it every night for dinner. I told her I hadn't done anything crazy to it, just refinished it a little, and she asked if she could come see it. When she showed up that afternoon, I could tell she was nervous. She was maybe late 20s, quiet, holding a coffee like she didn't know what to do with her hands. When she stepped inside and saw the table, she froze. She didn't touch it right away. She just looked at it, kind of in shock. Then she ran her hand across the surface and smiled, really small, like it took effort. She said it looked better than she remembered, but the little details were still there. The faint scratch where her mom used to drag a serving dish. The same small dent near the corner. She sat down in it for a while, not saying anything. I didn't want to interrupt. After a few minutes, she asked how much I wanted for it. I told her $200 like the listing said, but she didn't even blink. She pulled out her wallet, handed me the cash, and said thank you. That should have been the end of it, but she didn't leave right away. She said, "Can I ask something weird?" I said, "Sure." She said, "Did you ever notice anything strange about it?" I laughed a little and said no, unless you count the amount of sanding dust I had to clean up. She smiled, but didn't look convinced. Then she told me her mom used to keep a note hidden inside one of the legs. Apparently, the table had a little removable cap underneath where she'd stash letters or reminders. I had no idea. She crouched down and checked under one of the corners. The leg was hollowed out in one spot, and when she twisted the cap, it came loose. She reached in and pulled out a small folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. She opened it and started crying. I didn't want to stare, but it was hard not to. She said it was her mom's handwriting. The note just said, "Don't forget to sit down and eat together." She sat there for a while holding it, then folded it carefully and put it in her bag. When she left, I thought that was it. Just one of those weird emotional coincidences that happen sometimes. But a few days later, she messaged me again. She said she couldn't stop thinking about how she found that note, and that she told her brother about it. He apparently didn't believe her, so she sent him a picture. Then she asked me if I remembered exactly where I bought the table from, like the address. I gave it to her. She said she wanted to go there just to see it one last time. I told her I didn't think anyone lived there anymore. The sale looked like it cleared the whole place out, but she said she just wanted to drive by. That night, she messaged me again. She said she went to the house, but it didn't look empty. The lights were on, and someone was moving inside. She said it looked like her uncle's car out front, the same one who'd handled the estate. She sounded uneasy, like she didn't know if she should have gone. The next day, she sent me one more message. It said, "I got another note." I asked what she meant, but she never replied. Her profile went quiet after that. No new posts, no replies. A few weeks later, when I tried checking again, her account was gone. I don't know what happened, and maybe it's not my place to wonder. But every time I think about that table, I can't stop picturing her crouched under it, finding that note. I never told her, but after she left that day, I checked the other table legs. There were more caps underneath, sealed tight. I didn't open them. When she came to pick it up, she looked lighter, like she'd gotten something she didn't know she was missing. I think that's why I didn't open the rest. Some things should stay with the people they're meant for. Now, I still flip furniture, but I always check drawers and hidden spots before I list anything. You'd be surprised what people leave behind. Old receipts, family photos, even wedding invites. But nothing ever felt like that table did. Sometimes I wonder if she ever opened the other legs or if she even kept it. I like to think she did. I've been saving up for a camera for months. I just started getting into photography, not professional or anything, just messing around with pictures of city lights and random stuff. I couldn't afford a new one, so I was scrolling through Marketplace and OfferUp almost every day, looking for something good that wouldn't drain my wallet. One afternoon, I found this listing for a Canon DSLR, looked brand new. The guy selling it said he barely used it, came with a tripod and a case, all for $350. That was a deal. I messaged him right away. The seller's name was Alex. His profile had a bunch of photography posts, portraits of people, cityscapes, nature shots. He seemed legit. I figured it was one of those people who bought expensive gear and lost interest. He said I could come try it out in person before buying. That sounded normal since you don't really want to drop hundreds on something that might be broken. He gave me an address that was about 20 minutes away, near the older part of town. When I got there, it wasn't like I expected. The neighborhood wasn't bad, but the house looked kind of half lived in, if that makes sense. Like, it wasn't dirty, but it didn't feel warm either. Just walls, curtains half drawn, boxes stacked near the door. Alex answered when I knocked. He was probably mid-30s, tall, quiet voice, glasses, had this calm way of talking that made everything seem fine, even when it wasn't. The camera was sitting on the table already, all set up with a tripod. He handed it to me and told me to take a few shots around the room to test it. It worked perfectly. The shutter was smooth, the focus was sharp. I snapped a few photos of the couch, a plant in the corner, even one of the cat that ran across the hallway. Then he said, "Let me take one of you. It's easier to see how it handles portraits." I hesitated. I don't really like having my picture taken, especially by strangers, but he said it so casually that I didn't want to make it weird. He said he'd delete them right after anyway. So I stood there while he took a few shots. The flash popped, and he smiled at the camera screen like everything was fine. He said one more, and this time he told me to move closer to the window for better lighting. Then another with the curtain open. Then he told me to sit. He adjusted my hair slightly, saying it helped with the frame. It was awkward, but I figured maybe that's just how photographers are. He showed me one of the photos on the screen. It looked really good, actually. Way better than I expected. He offered to email them to me, but I said no, that's fine. I just wanted the camera. We wrapped up the deal. I gave him the $350, and he helped me pack it into the case. He seemed nice the whole time. Polite, quiet. Nothing weird beyond maybe being a little too into his testing. I went home happy, thinking I finally scored something worth the money. I took the camera out later that night and tried shooting a few pictures around my apartment. Everything worked fine. I used it for the next few weeks, taking photos of random stuff. Sunsets, my friends, even a few street shots downtown. Then one night, I was scrolling through Instagram and ended up on a page that looked familiar. It was called Portraits by Alexum. The name caught my eye, and I remembered that was the same handle from his marketplace profile. I clicked on it just to see what kind of photos he posted. The first few were just normal portraits, strangers posing in parks, city backgrounds, moody lighting. Then I scrolled a little more and froze. It was me. Same clothes that worn the day I bought the camera, same lighting. The caption said, "Natural light test subject. Minimal editing." He didn't blur my face or anything. Just full-on clear photo of me looking straight at the camera. I scrolled again. There were more. 3 different shots. One where I was near the window, one sitting, and one that I didn't even remember him taking. I felt my stomach drop. I hadn't signed anything. I hadn't agreed to be posted anywhere. I messaged him right away. I said, "Hey, you posted my pictures on your page. Can you take them down?" He didn't reply that night. The next morning, I checked again. Not only were the pictures still up, but one of them had gained a bunch of likes. The caption had changed too. It now said, "One of my favorite sessions. Love capturing raw faces." That freaked me out. I commented under the post, saying I never gave permission, and a few people replied saying maybe I was lying or trying to get attention. He deleted my comment after an hour. I messaged again, and he finally replied, saying, "You posed for them. You agreed." That wasn't true. I'd never agreed to be used as content. I went through his page again, looking at other portraits, and started noticing something off. Most of the photos didn't have tags or captions with names. The people all looked like random strangers, people you'd see at a bus stop or walking downtown. None of them looked posed, but all the shots were close up, detailed, personal. It hit me that maybe I wasn't the only one. I tried reporting his account, but Instagram didn't take it down. Said it didn't violate their terms because it was artistic content. I even posted about it myself, but no one really cared. It's weird how something like that feels huge to you, but small to everyone else. A week later, I checked his page again. He'd added new photos, and one of the captions said, "Sometimes the camera finds people before they realize they're meant to be seen." I can't explain it, but that line made my skin crawl. I blocked him after that, deleted his messages, even thought about selling the camera, but I didn't. Instead, I wiped it again and kept it in a drawer. For some reason, I couldn't bring myself to use it anymore. Every time I picked it up, I felt I could still hear the click from when he took my photo that day. Months later, one of my friends sent me a TikTok link. It was a compilation of underrated photographers. Guess whose photo popped up in the middle? Mine. Same shot. My face on some stranger's feet again, this time edited black and white with music playing over it. I reported it, but by the next day, 10 different pages had already reposted it. People were commenting stuff like, "She looks mysterious," and "This gives cinematic vibes." None of them knew it wasn't even supposed to exist. Now, every time I see someone walking around downtown with a camera, I turn away. I don't want to end up in someone else's art. And that camera I bought from him, it's still in my closet. I can't throw it out, but I can't use it either. Sometimes when I open the drawer, the reflection from the lens catches the light, and for a split second, it looks like an eye staring back. Maybe it's just me imagining things, but every time I see that glint, I swear it feels like it's still watching. I was not planning on buying a fridge that day. It wasn't even on my list. My old one still worked, even if it made that loud humming noise that sounded like a motorcycle idling in the kitchen. But then one morning, it just quit. Everything inside was half melted, milk smelled sour, and my roommate blamed me for not maintaining it. Whatever that means. So I jumped on Marketplace, typed fridge near me, and started scrolling. Most of them looked either too old or too fancy for what I could afford. Then I found this one. The post said, barely used fridge, works great, $120. The photos looked clean, and it was only a few miles away. I messaged the seller, a guy named Kevin. He said he just moved into a smaller apartment and didn't need 2 fridges. Said I could come check it out that evening. His address led me to his big apartment complex that looked brand new. The hallways smelled like paint and carpet glue. When I got to his unit, he opened the door halfway and waved me in. He looked mid-40s, glasses, polite smile. Inside, the place was spotless, but also kind of empty. There was almost no furniture except a couch and a TV. The fridge was sitting unplugged near the kitchen island, shiny and stainless steel. He said it worked perfectly and I could plug it in to test if I wanted. I opened it up. It looked fine. Shelves clean, no smell. Freezer cold to the touch, even though it was unplugged. I asked him how old it was, and he said about a year. It seemed like a good deal, so I handed over $120 cash. He helped me load it onto my truck, even threw in some bungee cords for free. Whole thing took maybe 20 minutes. When I got home, I set it up right away. Plugged it in and let it cool down. It was late by then, but I couldn't resist giving it a wipe down before putting groceries back in. I opened the freezer and noticed something strange. There was a plastic grocery bag stuck behind one of the drawers. I pulled it out, thinking it was just packing material or something he forgot. But inside were 3 clear meal prep containers stacked on top of each other, each one labeled with masking tape. The handwriting was neat, like printed letters. The label said, Monday, Jess. Wednesday, Jess. Friday, Jess. At first, I thought maybe it was his or a friend's, but then I noticed the food inside looked fresh, not like week-old leftovers. It was sealed tight. Chicken, rice, some kind of green beans. There was frost on the edges, but no smell. I figured maybe he just forgot them when cleaning it out. Still, it felt weird. Who leaves home-cooked food labeled with someone's name inside a fridge you're selling? I messaged him right away. I said, hey, I found some containers in the freezer with the name Jess on them. Do you want me to toss them or bring them back? He didn't reply that night. The next day, no response. I waited another full day. Nothing. So I decided I'd just throw them out. But when I opened the freezer again, I swear the frost had melted slightly even though it had been running nonstop. The containers looked different, like they'd been moved around. I brushed it off. Told myself maybe I was remembering wrong. That weekend I had a couple friends over. I told them the story, and they dared me to open one. I didn't want to, but they kept joking, saying maybe I'd find a secret recipe or something, so I did. When I peeled back the lid on the Monday one, it wasn't just chicken and rice anymore. There was a folded piece of paper wedged between the rice and the side of the container. It was damp, but the writing was still visible. It said, she doesn't like it cold. That's when I slammed it shut. My friends laughed at first, thought it was a prank, but the handwriting looked the same as the labels. I threw the whole bag out that night. But the next morning, when I opened the fridge to grab milk, there was condensation all over the inside, like someone had opened it overnight. The light flickered a little. Then I noticed something small taped to the inside wall. Another piece of masking tape, blank except for one word. Friday. I knew that wasn't there before. I called Kevin again. This time he picked up. His voice sounded off, like he was half asleep or trying not to talk loud. I told him I found more labels and asked if there was something I needed to know about the fridge. He paused for a long time, then just said, throw it away, and hung up. I tried calling back, but it went straight to voicemail. I checked his Marketplace profile, gone, like deleted. At that point, I didn't want to deal with it anymore. I unplugged the fridge and dragged it out to my garage. I figured I'd sell it for parts or take it to the dump later. But that night, I woke up to this low humming noise. I thought it was my old fridge again, but it was coming from the garage. I went out there, and sure enough, the barely used fridge was on. The light inside was flickering, even though it wasn't plugged in. The cord was still wrapped around the back, but the hum was steady, like it was alive somehow. I opened it, and I swear I saw my breath in the air. Inside, sitting dead center on the top shelf, was one container. Same kind, same label. Monday, Jess. I didn't touch it. I shut the door, walked back inside, and locked the garage. The next morning, I borrowed my neighbor's truck and took the fridge straight to the recycling center. I didn't even look inside again. I just told them it stopped working and I needed it gone. It charged me a small fee to dump it, and I didn't care. I wanted it as far away from me as possible. That night, I checked my phone out of habit, and there was a new message request on Marketplace. It was from someone named Jessica L. The message said, "Did you get it cleaned?" I didn't reply. A few days later, when I went out to the garage, there was frost on the concrete where the fridge used to be, like a perfect rectangle outline. I'd know how that sounds. Maybe it was just leftover condensation. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong. But every now and then, when I open my new fridge, I still half expect to see those same containers waiting inside. And sometimes when the light flickers, I catch myself looking at the back wall just to make sure there isn't another label waiting for me. I don't really use Marketplace that much, mostly because I don't trust people. Half the time it's scammers, half the time it's just weirdos who think like new means soaked in cat pee. But my girlfriend wanted a bookshelf for our new apartment, and I was the one with the truck, so I got volunteered to find one. She sent me a listing she liked. It was this tall oak bookshelf, simple design, good condition, only $50. The post said, "Moving soon, needed gone today." The photos looked normal, and the seller's name was Mark. His profile had a few other furniture listings and a profile picture of some guy holding a dog. Totally normal. I messaged him, asked if it was still available, and he replied in seconds. "Yeah, come by whenever it's on the porch. Cash or Venmo is fine." Easy enough. He gave me an address about 20 minutes away out in the suburbs. I told my girlfriend I'd go get it after work. It was already getting dark by the time I left. I remember the sky had that weird purple tint, and the air smelled like rain even though it hadn't started yet. The neighborhood looked quiet, the kind where everyone's lawns looked the same and the mailboxes are all identical. When I pulled up to the address, the porch light was on, but no one was outside. The house looked nice. 2 stories, clean driveway, big windows. I parked on the curb, checked the messages again, and saw that Mark had written, "Just grab it from the porch, no need to knock. I trust you." There was a bookshelf sitting by the door, covered with a tarp. It looked exactly like the photos. So I figured, okay, no problem. I texted him, "Here now looks great." And he replied, "Perfect. Leave the cash in the mailbox." That gave me pause for a second. It felt weird leaving money in a stranger's mailbox, but I figured maybe he wasn't home and didn't want to deal with contact. People do that sometimes. So I set the $50 inside an envelope, dropped it in, and started loading the bookshelf into my truck. It was heavier than I expected, and halfway through, the front door opened. A woman stepped out. She looked mid-40s, wearing sweatpants and holding a mug. She looked confused when she saw me. I said something like, "Hey, just grabbing this bookshelf. Mark said it'd be on the porch." Her face changed instantly. "Who's Mark?" she said. Right there, I knew I'd messed up. I told her I bought the bookshelf through Marketplace, and she shook her head slowly, like she didn't understand what I was saying. Then she said, "This isn't for sale. That's my bookshelf." My stomach dropped. I pulled out my phone and showed her the messages, hoping it would clear things up. She looked at them for a few seconds, and then said, "That's not me, and I don't know who that is." She told me to wait while she went inside to grab her husband. He came out a minute later, already on the phone with someone. I could hear him saying, "Yeah, he's still here. Says some guy told him to take it." That's when I realized he was calling the police. I tried to explain everything, said I'd show them the messages, the listing, anything. I even offered to help bring the bookshelf back inside. They didn't yell or anything, but I could tell they didn't believe me at first. The cops showed up about 10 minutes later, lights flashing, which definitely made the neighbors peek out their windows. One of the officers asked for my ID and then looked at my phone. I showed them the messages again, the listing, the address. It all matched this house. Then one of the officers looked at the homeowner and said, "You said you didn't list anything for sale. She said no, and her husband nodded. We don't even have a Facebook, he said. The officer sighed and said it wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Apparently, people had been making fake listings using real addresses, usually from Zillow or Google Maps photos, then getting buyers to show up and leave cash. That's when it hit me. Mark never planned to meet me. He probably picked a random address from somewhere online, waited for me to say I'd leave the money, and then ghosted. The officer called it porch scamming. They said it happens a lot with appliances and furniture because people are too trusting when sellers say, just grab it. Luckily, the homeowners were chill about it. They saw I was just as confused as they were. I apologized like 10 times and offered to fix the dent I made in their lawn dragging the bookshelf. They actually laughed a little once the cops left. But when I checked my messages again, the listing was gone. So was Mark's profile. Deleted completely, like he vanished. I tried searching the photos from the listing on Google, and sure enough, they popped up on some random Pinterest board from 3 years ago. He hadn't even taken them himself. The weird part is, about a week later, I got another message from a different account. The name was Mark D, this time not just Mark. And the message said, sorry about the mix-up. I've got another piece you might like, bigger bookshelf, same area. Same writing style. Same weird friendliness. I blocked him immediately. Now, every time I buy something online, I double-check the address first. I even reverse search it to see if it's a real listing or a random house someone pulled from Google. What still freaks me out is thinking about what could have happened if that woman hadn't come outside right then. I could have driven off with someone's furniture, thinking it was mine, and they'd probably have cameras or something showing me loading it into my truck. Imagine trying to explain that video to the cops. No, really, I swear a guy named Mark told me to take it. Yeah, that would have gone over great. Since then, I only meet sellers in parking lots. No more porch pickups. My girlfriend still teases me about it every time she sees a bookshelf. She'll say, "You sure it's not stolen?" and laugh. I laugh too, but every now and then I still get random messages on Marketplace from new profiles, all with the same weird tone. Hey, easy pickup, just leave the cash. I never reply. And the crazy thing? I read online later that a bunch of people in my area got hit with the same scam around that time. Different items, different fake sellers, all the same setup. Some even said they left the money with back to the furniture and found the porch completely empty. Guess I got lucky. I didn't lose the $50, but I definitely lost some trust. Now, whenever someone says it's on the porch, just grab it, I don't even bother. Because last time someone said that, it almost ended with flashing lights and a police report. I used to bike everywhere. Not like hardcore cyclist style, but enough that people knew me as the guy with the blue bike. It was this light blue Trek I'd saved up for back when I was still in school. I rode it to work, the store, everywhere. That thing had been with me through 3 apartments, a breakup, and at least a dozen flat tires. But a few months ago, I decided to sell it. I bought a car and stopped riding as much, and the bike was just sitting there in my garage collecting dust. It felt pointless keeping it. So I listed it for $400 on Marketplace. I thought maybe some college kid would grab it. Within a day, this guy named Mason messaged me. Said he was getting back into biking and wanted something decent but not brand new. His profile looked fine, couple of posts about hiking, 1 photo with a dog. He didn't try to haggle, just said he could come that night with cash. Sounded easy enough. When he showed up, he looked normal, mid-20s, jeans, hoodie, kind of quiet but friendly. He checked the gears, spun the wheels, asked a few questions. I told him everything worked fine except the bell was broken. He laughed and said that was no big deal. He handed me $400, we shook hands, and he rode off right there, pedaling down the street like he couldn't wait. That was it. Simple, clean sale. 2 weeks went by, and I didn't think about it again. Then one night, I was at my friend's place, and he showed me this video that was blowing up online. It was security cam footage of a hit and run downtown. A guy had a bike cutting across the street right after a car hit someone. The caption said, "Cyclist flees scene after fatal accident." At first, I didn't think anything of it. Then the camera angle changed and I saw the bike. It was the same blue Trek. Same black seat cover, same little sticker on the frame that I put there years ago. My stomach dropped. The guy that looked like Mason, same build, same hoodie. The video showed him glancing back once, then taking off down a side street. I froze. I didn't even know what to say to my friend. He looked at me and said, "Dude, that looks exactly like your bike." I pulled out my phone, opened the old Marketplace chat, and scrolled through it again. I looked at the timestamp of when I sold it and the date on the video. They matched up almost exactly. That night, I couldn't stop watching the clip. It was everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, even local news pages. Some people were saying the cyclist might have caused the accident. Others said he was just nearby. No one knew for sure. I figured maybe it was a coincidence. There are a lot of blue trucks out there. But then I saw a still photo someone posted in the comments, a close-up of the frame as he was riding off. You could see the serial number faintly in the reflection. I zoomed in and froze. It matched mine. I read it twice just to be sure, but there was no mistake. That was my bike. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about whether I should call the police. I hadn't done anything wrong, but it still made me feel sick, like I'd somehow been part of it. I dug through my stuff until I found the old receipt from when I bought the bike, just in case. The next morning, I decided to go to the station. I told the officer everything, that I'd sold the bike to a guy named Mason, showed him our messages, the receipt, everything. He took notes and said they were already looking for the cyclist from the video, so the info might help. He asked if I remembered anything specific about Mason, like his car or where he said he lived. I told him he'd come on foot, said he lived close by, but didn't give an address. The officer said they'd reach out if they needed more details. A few days later, they called back. They confirmed it was my old bike, but they couldn't say much else. They just asked me to come in and verify the serial number again. When I got there, they had the bike sitting in an evidence room. Seeing it again felt weird, like running into an old friend who'd been through something bad. The tires were muddy, the paint scratched. It didn't look like mine anymore, but the number was right there. The officer said they found it abandoned behind an alley near the river a few miles from where the accident happened. No sign of Mason. I asked if they thought he was the one who hid the person, but they said they weren't sure yet. The footage wasn't clear enough to tell if he'd been involved or just nearby when it happened. When I got home that night, I looked up the story again. The news said the person hit in the accident had survived, but was in serious condition. The driver hadn't been caught either. I felt a mix of relief and guilt that I couldn't explain. A week later, I got another message on Marketplace. It was from a new account with no profile picture. The message said, "You shouldn't have talked to them." I froze. I tried replying, but the message wouldn't send. The account was deleted right after. I told the police, but they said it could have been a random troll since the story had gone public. Still, it messed with my head. A couple nights later, I was walking home from work and I swore I saw someone riding a blue bike across the intersection. It looked too new to be mine, but my heart started racing anyway. I couldn't see his face, but the hoodie looked familiar. Now, I know it's probably just my brain messing with me, connecting dots that don't exist, but since then, I've had this weird feeling like someone's been watching my listings online. Every time I post something for sale, I get one or two messages that sound off. Stuff like "still selling" with no profile picture, or "meet at the same spot as before." I've stopped replying to those. I don't meet strangers anymore. The cops called one more time a few weeks later, said the case was still open, but they had no leads. They offered to return the bike to me since I was still technically the last registered owner. I told them to keep it. It didn't feel like mine anymore. I ended up buying a new bike a few months after that, just a basic black one. Nothing that stands out, but I don't ride it much. Every time I see a blue bike on the road, I get that same tight feeling in my chest, like maybe it's him, or maybe it's just another random guy who doesn't know the story. Sometimes when I scroll through videos online, that old clip still pops up in the algorithm. People still argue in the comments, trying to figure out who the cyclist was. They have no idea I'm the one who sold him that bike. I wasn't even looking for a laptop that day. I'd spilled coffee on mine a week earlier, and the repair shop wanted more than it was worth to fix. So I was scrolling Marketplace half out of frustration, half out of hope, when I saw this post. Used Lenovo laptop. Works great. $100 OBO. The listing looked normal. The photos were kind of blurry, but you could tell it wasn't beat up. The description just said, "Selling for a friend, factory reset, ready to use." The seller's name was Rachel. I messaged her, offered $80, and she agreed right away. She said to meet at the Starbucks on Elm Street around noon. I figured that was safe enough. When I got there, she was sitting outside, sipping iced coffee. She looked around my age, maybe late 20s, and seemed normal, friendly but tired. The laptop was in a sleeve on the table. She said it had belonged to her coworker who didn't work there anymore. I didn't ask too many questions. I turned it on, saw it booted fine, and handed her $80. Quick, easy done. That night, I plugged it in and started setting it up. Everything looked fine at first. There was a user folder named admin, but it was empty. I figured she'd really done a factory reset like she said. Then I noticed an extra folder sitting on the desktop called docs. I thought it was weird because that shouldn't have been there after a reset. I clicked it. Inside were about 20 files. Most were Word documents with boring names like meeting notes or budget clauses. I'd opened one, and it looked like a company spreadsheet, numbers, salaries, emails. Real company info. The file name said, Q3 Strategy, Darren. I read through a few lines and started realizing this wasn't random. It looked like it belonged to someone who worked in management somewhere. I closed it right away. I didn't want to snoop, but my curiosity got the better of me. There was one file called letterdraft.docs. I opened it. It was a resignation letter, half written, like the person stopped mid-sentence. It said, "To the board, I can no longer continue under these conditions. After discovering what happened with the accounts, I feel I have no choice but to step away before it becomes worse." Then it just ended. No signature, no closing. I stared at it for a while, wondering who Darren was. The same name was in the spreadsheet title. Maybe he was the coworker she mentioned. I thought about deleting everything and just using the laptop, but something felt off. I checked a downloads folder, and there were a few PDFs with names like payroll history and client records. Some had passwords, but one opened. It was a scanned copy of an ID badge for a company called Hansen & Co. Logistics. I Googled it, and it was a real place about 30 minutes from where I live. That made it even stranger. For a few days, I didn't do anything. I used the laptop for small stuff, emails, Netflix. But every time I saw that docs folder on the desktop, it bugged me. I thought maybe I should tell someone, but who? The seller? The company? The police? I didn't even know if anything illegal had happened. Then one night, while I was scrolling through files again, yeah, I know, I shouldn't have, I found something else. In the recent documents list, there was one I hadn't opened before called Notes. It wasn't in any folder. When I clicked it, it opened in Notepad and had one line written in all caps. "It's too late for you." That freaked me out so bad I slammed the lid shut. My first thought was that it was some kind of joke or prank, but it didn't feel like one. I sat there staring at the laptop, debating if I should wipe it again myself. I tried calling Rachel the next morning, but her number said no longer in service. I checked our marketplace messages. Her profile was gone too. At that point, I decided to do a deep reset myself. I went into settings and wiped the entire drive. When it restarted, it looked clean. Empty desktop, no weird folders. I thought it was over. But 2 days later, I opened it up again, and the same folder, Docs, was back. It had the same files. The resignation letter, the spreadsheets, everything. I swear I didn't restore anything. I didn't even connect it to Wi-Fi yet. I had unplugged it, closed the lid, and just stared at it like it might explode. I took it to a computer repair shop the next morning. The tech guy was this older dude with glasses who looked like he'd seen it all. I told him what happened and asked if he could wipe it clean for real. He said sure and asked to see the folder. When he opened the laptop, it booted fine, but the folder was gone, like completely gone. The desktop was empty, and the recent documents list was blank. He gave me this look like he thought I was making it up. He did the reset anyway, charged me $40, and said I was good to go. I didn't touch it for a few days after that. I kept thinking about that message. It's too late. I told myself it was just some leftover file glitch or maybe a bored employee's prank. Then about a week later, I got an email from someone with the subject line, "Return it." No name, just an address from some weird domain I didn't recognize. The message said, "You weren't supposed to see any of that. Please bring the device to 1928 Keller Avenue before Friday." I read it 3 times before realizing that was the same address listed on one of the invoices in the files, the Hansen & Co. place. I didn't go. I deleted the email and tried to forget about it. But a few days later, when I turned on the laptop again, it beeped twice and displayed a black screen with white text that said, UBISIR DTC'd. System restore complete. Then it restarted by itself. When the desktop loaded, the docs folder was back. That was enough for me. I shut it down, unplugged it, and took it straight to a recycling center that handles electronics. I told them it was fried and didn't want it back. They didn't ask questions. About a month later, I saw a short article online about a data breach at Hansen & Co. It mentioned a former employee named Darren who was under investigation. The article didn't go into details, but it said the company had lost sensitive client data due to an internal issue. I closed the tab right away. Every now and then, I still wonder if that laptop somehow connected to their system when I turned it on. Like maybe it wasn't just leftover files, maybe it was synced to something. I don't buy used electronics anymore. I don't even trust the ones I already have. Because sometimes it's not what's broken you have to worry about. It's what's still working when it shouldn't be. I didn't want to give up my dog. I need to start with that. It wasn't one of those careless decisions. This was something that ate at me for weeks before I'd even listed him. His name was Tucker, a 2-year-old golden retriever, the kind of dog that acts like a best friend and a toddler at the same time. He'd been mine since he was a puppy, but things had gotten complicated. I'd moved into a smaller place after my job situation changed, and my new landlord had this whole no large dogs rule. I tried to argue that Tucker was calm, that he barely barked, but they didn't care. I couldn't afford to move again, and I didn't have any family nearby willing to take him. So I did what everyone does when they're desperate. I posted an ad. The listing said, rehoming my golden retriever, Tucker, 2 years old. Friendly, trained, loves kids. I added that I wanted him to go to a good home. No breeders, no flippers. I set the rehoming fee at $150, not because I wanted money, but because I'd weeds out the people who aren't serious. I got a flood of messages right away. Most of them seemed fine, a few sketchy. One guy asked if he could borrow Tucker for a few weeks, whatever that meant. Another said he'd take him sight unseen and would send someone to pick him up. I ignored both. Then I got a message from this guy named Drew. His profile picture showed him sitting on a porch with another dog. He said he just lost his golden last year and was looking for a new companion. He told me about his house with a big fenced yard, how he worked from home, how he'd always had dogs growing up. He even asked what kind of food Tucker liked and if he had any health issues. He sounded perfect. I told him I wanted to meet in person first. We met at a park downtown on a Saturday morning. Tucker was his usual happy self, wagging his tail, running around. Drew showed up wearing sunglasses and carrying a tennis ball, like he'd done this 1,000 times before. Tucker took to him instantly. They played fetch for a while, and Drew kept saying how he reminded him of his old dog. He offered to pay the rehoming fee in cash right there, said he'd send me pictures and updates all the time. He seemed genuine, the kind of guy who knew what he was doing. I handed Tucker's leash over and tried not to cry while he loaded him into the back of his SUV. Tucker wagged his tail the whole time, completely unaware. When Drew drove away, I sat in my car for like 15 minutes just staring at my phone, waiting for a message or something. He did text me later that day, a picture of Tucker lying on a couch with a caption that said, "He's settling in already." That made me feel better. For the first week, everything seemed fine. He sent a few photos, said Tucker was adjusting well, that he loved running in the yard, but then the messages stopped. I figured he was just busy. About 2 weeks later, my friend sent me a screenshot out of nowhere. It was from a dating app. Tinder, I think. The profile showed a picture of Drew holding Tucker with a bio that said, "Dog Dad. Outdoor say. Loyal." My friend sent it with a message, "He's not your dog." I looked at it for a long time. It was Tucker, no doubt. Same collar, same goofy grin. I wasn't even mad at first, just confused. Maybe he really was a dog lover and just used the photo because it looked nice. But then I noticed something in the background. It was my old blanket, the one I packed in Tucker's bag when I gave him away. He hadn't even changed it. I messaged Drew that night. I asked how Tucker was doing and if he'd been out for walks lately. He replied almost instantly, but didn't sound like him. He said, "Yeah, he's great. We're doing a shoot this weekend." A shoot? I asked what that meant, and he said, just taking some photos. He helps with engagement. I didn't know what he meant at first, so I asked again. He finally replied with, people swipe more when there's a dog in the pics. You'd be surprised. That's when it hit me. He'd adopted Tucker not because he wanted a dog, but because he wanted an asterisk likes asterisk. I told him that wasn't cool, that Tucker wasn't some prop. He sent back a laughing emoji and said, relax, he loves the attention. That night, I found his Instagram. He turned it into a whole dog dad aesthetic. Every photo had Tucker in it, at the beach, in cafes, on hiking trails. All these comments from women saying things like, so cute, and you're such a good dog dad. He had thousands of followers. I scrolled through and noticed something else. Some of the photos looked staged, like he dressed Tucker in bandanas or posed him in front of fancy cars. The captions were weird too. Stuff like, adopt don't shop, but make sure they photograph well. That made me sick. I messaged him again and said I wanted Tucker back. He ignored me. I messaged again, saying I'd pay him double what he gave me. Still nothing. Eventually, I got blocked. I didn't know what to do. I thought about reporting him, but technically I'd given him the dog willingly. I even had the messages that said so. My only option was to keep checking his posts, which I did way too often. A month later, one of his photos blew up. Some influencer had reshared it, and suddenly his profile was everywhere. The caption said, adopted this handsome boy from a neglectful owner. Best decision I ever made. Neglectful owner. That's what he called me. I tried commenting to defend myself, but the comments moved too fast. People were praising him for rescuing Tucker. Someone even made fan edits of them. It was insane. After that, I stopped looking. I couldn't do it anymore. A few months later, I got a message from a woman named Kara. She said she'd seen my old marketplace post still floating around and wanted to warn me. She said she'd almost given Drew her cat, but something felt off. He told her the same story, that he lost his pet and wanted a new one. Then she found his Instagram and realized he was just collecting animals for clout. She said she thought he'd already rehomed 2 other dogs in the same month. I thanked her, but what could I do? I'd already lost Tucker. Every now and then, people still send me photos of him when he pops up on some brand's page or dating post. He looks happy at least. That's the part I hold on to. But whenever I see him in another photo, I don't see a dog dad aesthetic. I just see my best friend looking at a camera he doesn't understand, waiting for someone who won't ever show up again. So this all started because I decided I was finally going to get in shape. Every year I tell myself the same thing, and every year I quit after a week, but this time I meant it. I was tired of paying for a gym membership I never used, so I figured I'd get some equipment at home. Make it easier to guilt myself into working out. I started looking around on Marketplace for a home gym setup. I didn't need anything fancy, just some dumbbells, maybe a bench, something small. I found this listing that said, full home gym set, barely used, great condition. The pictures looked solid. There was a bench press, weights, a treadmill, even one of those bikes with a screen. The seller's name was Lena. She said she was moving and needed everything gone that weekend. The price was $400 for all of it, which was insane. Usually just a treadmill costs that much. I messaged her and asked if it was legit. She replied right away, said everything worked fine, and I could come check it out that night. Her profile looked normal, lots of pictures of dogs, a couple of selfies, nothing sketchy. I told her I could come around 7. She gave me an address about 20 minutes away in this quiet neighborhood full of nice houses with big driveways. When I pulled up, it was getting dark, but the house looked normal enough. Lights out inside, a car in the driveway. I texted her, "Hey, I'm here," and she replied, "Come in through the garage, doors open." So I did. The garage was half full of boxes and random furniture. There was some gym equipment against the wall, but it looked kind of scattered, like someone had been moving stuff around and gave up halfway. I called out, "Hello," and this guy's voice yelled from the other side of the door, "Who the hell is that?" I froze. A second later, the door to the house swung open and this guy in a t-shirt and sweatpants stepped out. He looked confused and angry, like I'd just broken in. I held up my phone and said, I'm here about the gym stuff. Lena told me to come through the garage. He blinked at me, then laughed, but not in a funny way. More like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. He said, "Oh, of course she did." Then he muttered something under his breath and told me to wait there. I didn't move. I could hear him yelling inside, something about selling my stuff now. Then a woman's voice yelling back. After about a minute of shouting, Lena came out. She looked like she'd been crying, eyes red, hair tied up messily. She tried to smile and said, "Sorry about that. Things are just complicated right now." I didn't know what to say. I asked if she still wanted to sell the equipment, and before she could answer, a guy, who I guess was her boyfriend or husband, cut in and said, "She's not selling anything. This is my stuff." She shot him a look and said, "No, it's mine too, you barely used it." Then they started arguing again right in front of me. I stood there awkwardly in the middle of their garage holding my car keys, wondering if I should just leave. The guy turned to me and said, "Man, I'm sorry you drove out here, but this isn't for sale." Lena snapped back, "You don't get to decide that anymore," and stormed off toward the house. I looked at him and said, "Look, I don't want to get in the middle of this. I'll just go." But before I could walk out, she came back with her phone and said, "No, you're taking it. You already said I could sell it last week." Then she grabbed a couple of dumbbells off the floor and shoved them toward me. The guy yelled, "Put those down." And she yelled back, "He's paying me, not you." It was chaos. I just stood there holding weights while two strangers screamed at each other about who owned what. Finally, I said, "You know what? I'll come back another time. You guys figure this out." I started heading for the door, but Lena blocked me. "Please," she said, "just take it. I'll give you a discount. $300 for all of it, just so I can get it out of here." The guy stepped closer, and his voice dropped low. "She's selling this because she's leaving. Took half my stuff already. Don't get dragged into it, man." I believed him. I told her sorry, but I couldn't buy something if both of them were claiming it. I tried to hand the weights back, but she didn't take them. She just glared at him and said, "See? You ruin everything." That's when he lost it. He yelled something I couldn't catch, slammed the door, and the whole house went quiet. I set the weights down carefully, mumbled something about good luck, and got the hell out of there. When I got in my car, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Lena. "Sorry about that. He's just bitter. I'll drop the price to $250 if you come back tomorrow morning." I didn't reply. The next day, I checked Marketplace again out of curiosity. The listing was gone. But about an hour later, a new post popped up from the same area, same photos, same equipment, but under a different name. Mike. The price was $500. I clicked on the profile, and the first photo was the same guy from last night. The caption on the listing said, "Selling my home gym. X tried to list it behind my back." I just closed the app. 2 days later, I got another message from Lena. This time, it wasn't about the gym. She said, "If anyone messages you pretending to be me, ignore it." That was weird enough, but then an hour later, I got a message from someone named Mike Ape saying, "Don't talk to Lena. She's unstable." I deleted both messages and blocked them. A few weeks went by, and I kind of forgot about it. Then, one night, I was scrolling through Marketplace again, and I saw another post, same gym equipment, same photos. This time the name was Allison. Different person, same house. I decided to report it. I don't know if it helped, but the listing disappeared a few hours later. I never found out what happened between them, but every time I see a deal that looks too good to be true now, I double-check everything. I make sure both people are alive and not mid-argument before I even think about showing up. And I still don't have a home gym. I think I'll just stick to running outside. I just moved into a new place when this happened. The kind of cheap rental where the carpet looks older than you, but you convince yourself it's fine because the rent isn't insane. The walls were bare, and I was trying to make it feel less like a storage unit and more like somewhere an actual person lives. That's how I ended up looking for a mirror. Not a little bathroom one, but one of those tall ones you can lean against the wall, something that makes the room look less empty. I was scrolling through Marketplace one night, half bored, when I saw one listed for $25. It was simple, white wooden frame, full length, no cracks. The picture showed it leaning against a pink wall, so I figured it came from someone's kid's room. The seller's name was Linda. Her profile picture showed a woman maybe in her late 40s, smiling with a dog. The listing said, From my daughter's old room in great shape. Must pick up. I messaged her, asked if it was still available, and she replied almost immediately. She said, yes, come anytime tomorrow afternoon. She gave me her address, a house about 15 minutes away in a neighborhood I had never been to before. The next day was hot. One of those afternoons where the air feels thick. I threw a blanket in my backseat to keep the mirror from sliding around and drove over. The house looked normal, maybe a little dated. Blue shutters, garden gnomes by the walkway, a couple of potted plants on the porch. Linda opened the door before I even knocked. She had that friendly but tired look that older people sometimes have, like they've been smiling at neighbors their whole life. She said, "You're here for the mirror, right?" and waved me inside. The house smelled faintly like candles and something floral. The living room was neat but a little cluttered. Photos on every surface, a TV playing quietly in the corner. She led me down the hall to a small bedroom. The walls were pale pink, and there were still a few posters up, flowers, some faded band print, a calendar from a few years ago. The mirror was leaning against the wall next to a dresser. It was taller than I expected, maybe 6 feet. The frame was chipped at the bottom, but otherwise fine. I said it looked great and handed her $25. While I was loading it into the car, she said, "It belonged to my daughter. She used to sit in front of it for hours before school." Her tone was light, but something about the way she said it made me pause. I asked, "Oh, she moved out." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah, a while ago." Then she said, "I just think it's time to let go of some of her things." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded and thanked her again. She stood on the porch and waved as I drove away. When I got home, I wiped the dust off the mirror and leaned it against the wall in my bedroom. It looked good there. The frame made the room feel less empty, and the pinkish reflection from my lamp gave it this warm glow. That night, though, I kept catching my reflection at weird angles, like I'd walk past it and swear I saw movement even when I wasn't looking straight into it. I told myself I was just tired from moving and the lighting was weird. The next morning, I noticed fingerprints on the glass. Not mine. Small ones, like from a kid. I tried wiping them off, but they didn't fully disappear. Whatever. It's an old mirror, I figured. A couple days later, I stopped at the grocery store near my apartment to grab some stuff. On my way out, I passed one of those bulletin boards by the doors, a kind with lost pets and community flyers. There was a missing person poster taped in the middle. It was a teenage girl, maybe 16. Blonde hair, blue eyes, smiling in the photo. Her name was Megan. The words underneath said she'd been missing for nearly 3 years. I didn't think much of it until I saw the photo credit line at the bottom. Photo provided by Linda Deldy. I froze. It was the same name. I read the flyer again just to be sure. The address listed for contact was the same street I'd been to 2 days before. My brain immediately went to the pink room, the posters, the calendar that was years out of date, from my daughter's old room. I couldn't stop thinking about how she'd said that, like she was talking about someone who'd just grown up and moved out, not someone who'd vanished. I drove home with my stomach twisting. When I got there, the first thing I did was go to the bedroom and look at the mirror. For a second, it looked completely normal. Then I noticed something stuck to the bottom corner of the frame, like a little scrap of paper wedged underneath. I knelt down and pulled it out. It was a photo. A small printed photo. It showed the same girl from the missing poster, sitting cross-legged on the floor in front of the mirror. She was holding her phone, smiling at her reflection. The timestamp in the corner said 2019. I dropped it. I didn't even know what to do. I picked it back up carefully, like it might fall apart. I checked the back. Nothing written. I tried calling the number on the missing poster, but my hands were shaking too much, so I typed it into my phone instead. A woman answered. It was Linda. I froze again, not sure what to say. I finally managed. "Hi, I bought a mirror from you a few days ago. I think it might belong to your daughter." She went silent for a long time. Then she said softly, "Yes, it did." I told her I found a photo taped to the back, and she whispered, "There shouldn't be any photos left." I asked if she wanted it back, and she said, "No, you can keep it." And she hung up. That night, I couldn't stop staring at the mirror. The photo was sitting on my dresser, face down, but every time I looked into the glass, I swore the reflection looked slightly different, like the lighting behind me was off even when nothing else in the room changed. The next morning, I decided to get rid of it. I drove it to a thrift store, dropped it off behind the donation area, and didn't leave my name. 2 weeks later, I went back to that grocery store again. The missing poster was still there. Someone had written "still searching" across the top in thick black marker. When I walked past it, I saw a new flyer pinned next to it. It said estate sale, household items, furniture, decor. The address was the same as before. And with the photos on the flyer, a full-length mirror with a white frame. Alright, so I'm not proud of this, but I'm a bit of a clutter hoarder. Not the kind you see on those crazy TV shows, but the kind who keeps random stuff just in case. Old receipts, half-broken chargers, expired coupons. I have drawers full of that junk. So when I finally decided to sell my old desk, it was mostly because I needed to force myself to get rid of things. The desk had been sitting in my spare room for years. It was one of those big wooden ones with 3 drawers on each side and a middle one that always jammed. I used to do schoolwork there, then later used it as a dumping ground for mail and random papers. The thing took up half the room, and I wanted space for a fusion. I cleaned it out the best I could, vacuumed the drawers, wiped everything down, make sure no obvious trash was left inside, or at least I thought I did. I listed it for $75 on Marketplace. I wrote, "Solid wood desk, worn but sturdy, great for home office." I figured it'd sell fast, and since stuff like that usually does. The buyer messaged me that same night. His name was Tom. His profile picture was him in front of a pickup truck. Looked like mid-30s, beard, baseball cap. Nothing suspicious. He said he was setting up a workspace at home and could pick it up the next afternoon. When he came by, he was super friendly. We chatted a bit while loading the desk into his truck. He even complimented how old school it looked. He handed me $75 cash, shook my hand, and that was that. I didn't think about it again until 3 days later when someone started banging on my door around 9 p.m. It was Tom. I didn't even recognize him at first because it was dark outside, but when I opened the door, he said, "You're the one who sold me the desk." I said, "Yeah, what's up?" expecting maybe he wanted to return it or complain about a scratch or something. But his face looked weird, tense, like he was mad but trying not to show it. He said, "I found something in one of the drawers." I told him that was possible. I might have missed a paperclip or something, and before I could finish, he pulled out a small plastic bag from his pocket. Inside were 2 prescription bottles. He held them up and said, "Care to explain this?" My heart dropped for a second, not because I knew what they were, but because it was just so unexpected. I looked closer and realized they were old bottles from when I had surgery a few years ago. Pain meds I never finished. I must have shoved them in the back of a drawer and forgotten. They were probably expired by now. I said, "Oh man, I didn't even realize those were still in there. My bad. You can toss them." He didn't move. He just stared at me. Then he said, "You owe me for this." I laughed nervously and asked what he meant. He said he'd done some research and found out those pills were worth money if sold illegally, and since he found them, he figured I should pay him something to make it right. I thought he was joking at first. I said, "Dude, they're expired painkillers. Just throw them out." That's when his whole vibe changed. He stepped a little closer, lowered his voice, and said, "I could have gotten in trouble for this, you know. I bought something from you, and you didn't tell me there were drugs in it." It was starting to feel off. I told him again it was an accident, and that if it was such a problem, I'd take them back and handle it myself. He shook his head and said, "No, I already took pictures." That's when I realized he wasn't just some random guy being weird. He was trying to blackmail me. He said he'd already messaged me on Marketplace about it, but I hadn't seen anything because my notifications were off. I grabbed my phone and checked. Sure enough, there were 3 unread messages from him. Found something interesting in the desk. You might want to pay up before this becomes a legal issue. Last warning. I told him I wasn't paying him anything, that if he thought he could get me in trouble, he was welcome to call the cops. That seemed to throw him off for a second. He looked like he didn't expect me to say that. He muttered something like, "You'll regret it," and stormed off. I locked the door behind him and stood there for a minute, wondering if I should actually call the police myself. I didn't want to make it a big deal if it would just go away, but something about it didn't sit right. I decided to text a friend who's a cop, not to file a report, but just to ask what I should do. He said if the guy came back or kept threatening me, I should definitely call it in. He also said to save the messages as proof. The next morning, I woke up to 3 new messages from Tom. The first said, "You had your chance." The second was just a photo of the prescription bottles sitting on a table. The third said, "You'll be hearing from someone soon." I didn't reply. I just screenshotted everything and finally called the police. They sent an officer over that afternoon. He was calm about it, said it sounded like an attempted extortion thing. I showed him the messages and explained the whole situation. He said they'd make a note of it, then I should block Tom on Marketplace in my phone. He also said not to delete the screenshots. For a few days, nothing happened. I started to think it was over. Then one night, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line said, "About the desk." The email read, "You could handle this quietly." That freaked me out. I blocked the sender, but the next day, another message came from a different address. "You think you're safe because you called the cops." That's when I packed up my stuff and stayed at my friend's place for a couple nights. I didn't want to be home alone if he decided to show up again. A week passed, and then nothing. The messages stopped. The Marketplace account disappeared. I checked a few times just to see if he relisted the desk or something, but he hadn't. It was like he vanished. A month later, I got a call from that same cop I'd talked to before. He said they found Tom. Apparently, he'd been caught pulling the same stunt with other sellers, buying stuff, finding something incriminating inside, then trying to blackmail people for cash. They charged him for harassment and attempted fraud. The cop said my report helps confirm the pattern. I felt relieved, but also embarrassed. All that chaos because I didn't check the drawers properly. Now, every time I sell something, I take it apart completely. Drawers, corners, underneath, even behind it. You'd be surprised what you forget over the years. And sometimes when I go through my stuff, I still find little things I'd long forgotten. Old notes, receipts, keys to who knows what. But no more prescription bottles. Never again. When you buy a used car, you kind of expect a few surprises. Maybe an old fast food wrapper under the seat. Maybe a weird smell that takes a while to fade. Maybe a glove compartment full of random junk. But what I found in mine, I still think about it sometimes when I pop the boot open. I was in desperate need of a car back then. Mine had finally died, engine completely shot, and I didn't have the money for a dealership one. So I went the cheap route, Facebook Marketplace, the place where dreams and scams go hand in hand. After a few days of scrolling through absolute garbage, I found a listing for a silver 2012 Honda Civic. Looked clean in the pictures, no dents, and the price was decent, $2,400. The post said run smooth, new tires, just upgraded to an SUV. The seller's name was Brent. His profile looked normal, family photos, pictures of fishing trips, stuff like that. I messaged him right away. He replied super fast, said I could come test drive it that evening. When I got there, the car was parked in front of this small house on a quiet street. He was already waiting outside, leaning on the hood. He looked mid-30s, maybe early 40s, friendly enough. He handed me the keys and said, "Take it around the block, see how it feels." It actually drove great. Smooth, quiet, no weird noises. I checked the mileage, the interior, all good. The only thing that seemed a little off was a faint smell, like air freshener trying to cover something. Not horrible, just noticeable. When I got back, I mentioned it, and he laughed. "Yeah, I spilled coffee back there last week. Been trying to get it out." I shrugged it off. Coffee smell. Whatever. I handed him the cash, he gave me the title, and that was that. For the first few weeks, everything was fine. The car ran perfectly, gas mileage was great, no issues. I cleaned it inside and out, put a fresh air freshener on the vent, and kind of forgot about the smell. Then one weekend, I decided to do a deeper clean. I took out the mats, vacuumed everything, and finally opened the boot fully to wipe it down. That's when I saw it. There was a dark red stain in the corner near the latch. It wasn't fresh, but it had soaked into the fabric lining and turned it this rusty brown color. At first, I thought it really was just old coffee like he'd said. But the thing was, it didn't look like a spill. It looked like something had dripped there in a pattern. I leaned closer and noticed there were faint splatters leading up toward the edge of the boot. That's when the smell hit me. Stronger this time. Not coffee. Something else. I gagged a bit and stepped back. I thought maybe an animal had gotten trapped in there or something. I didn't want to overthink it, but it didn't sit right. I went back inside, grabbed a flashlight, and looked closer. That's when I saw a small piece of white fabric caught between the lining and the metal frame. I pulled it out with a pair of pliers. It was a torn bit of cloth, stiff and crusted. My stomach dropped. I told myself I was overreacting. It could have been paint or food or anything. But the way it looked, it was too real. I decided to do what anyone in a panic does. I Googled, what does dried blood in a car look like? Bad idea. Every photo looked exactly like what was in my boot. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the seller's words. I spilled coffee back there. The smell didn't match coffee. By morning, curiosity won. I took it to one of those detailing places and asked if they could deep clean the boot. The guy looked at it, then looked at me and said quietly, "You sure you want us to touch that?" That made me feel worse. He told me it looked like dried blood, not coffee, and that he'd have to report it if he found anything suspicious. I told him to go ahead. An hour later, he came back out and said, "You might want to call the police." Apparently, when they lifted the liner to clean underneath, they found what looked like small fibers and a few metal fragments stuck near the spare tire compartment. He didn't know what it was, but it didn't look right. So I called. The cops came and looked over the car. They were calm about it, asked me a bunch of questions. Where I got the car, who I bought it from, how long ago, all that. They took some samples and told me they'd run tests. They towed the car to their lot for a couple days to inspect it. I honestly thought I was going to get in trouble somehow. When they finally called me back, they said the stain had tested positive for traces of blood, but it was too degraded to identify. They said it might have been animal blood, maybe from transporting something like meat or hunting gear. That made sense, I guess. The guy did have fishing photos on his profile. Maybe he hunted too. Still, it creeped me out enough that I didn't want the car anymore. I told the officer that, and he said it wasn't technically unsafe or illegal to keep. It just depended on my comfort level. Yeah, no thanks. I listed it online a week later, full honesty. Used Honda Civic. Runs great. Has been professionally cleaned. Selling for $2,000. A guy came to see it and asked why I was selling so soon. I just said, it's not for me. He didn't ask more questions. I handed over the keys and watched him drive away. Even now, every time I see a silver Honda Civic on the road, my stomach tightens a little. It's dumb, but I can't unsee that stain. And I still think about the smell sometimes, the faint mix of cleaner and something sour underneath it. I'll never buy a car off Marketplace again. I don't care how good the deal is. Because sometimes when a seller says, coffee spill, it's better not to ask what flavor it really was. I'm the kind of person who buys everything secondhand. Clothes, furniture, toys, you name it. With how expensive stuff is now, I can't justify paying full price for things that a kid is just going to outgrow in a few months. So when I needed a new car seat for my daughter, I started looking online first. It didn't take long to find one that looked perfect. It was a gray Graco seat listed for $40 on Marketplace. The post said, clean, gently used, no accidents. The seller's name was Allison. Her profile showed a few family pictures, 2 kids, a minivan, normal suburban stuff. I messaged her, asked if it was still available, and she said yes, I could come by any time that evening. She sent me her address, and I told her I'd be there around 6. When I pulled up, she was already outside, the car seat sitting on her porch. She smiled but looked kind of tired, the way parents always do. She said something like, "It's been sitting in the garage since my youngest outgrew it, but it's in good shape." I checked it over quickly, no stains, no rips, straps still worked fine. She even wiped it down before I got there. I gave her the $40, thanked her, and she waved as I drove off. That night, I installed it in my car and didn't think twice about it. My daughter, Maddie, loved it. She kept saying it was comfy and that it made her feel like a big kid. About a week later, I decided to take the cover off to wash it. You're supposed to do that once in a while anyway, especially with kids who somehow get crumbs everywhere. I unbuckled the straps, pulled off the fabric, and shook it out. A few goldfish crackers and a little toy hair clip fell out. Normal mom stuff. Then I noticed something tucked under the padding, right near the back where the foam meets the plastic shell. It was folded paper yellowed a bit like it had been there for a while. I thought maybe it was a receipt or an instruction manual. When I unfolded it, I saw handwriting. It started with, "If you're reading this, I guess someone else owns this seat now. I'm sorry for what happened." That got my attention real quick. I sat down at the kitchen table and kept reading. The note went on. "I bought this seat for my son, Jacob, when he was born. It was supposed to keep him safe, and I trusted it completely. One day, I was driving home from daycare, and it was raining. I was tired, rushing, not paying enough attention. We got hit at an intersection. It said it wasn't my fault, but it still feels like it was. He didn't make it." I stopped right there. My stomach turned. The rest of the letter talked about how she couldn't bring herself to throw the car seat away. She said she kept it in her garage for 2 years, even though everyone told her to get rid of it. She wrote, "I know it's not safe anymore, but I can't destroy it. It feels like a part of him is still there." The last line said, "If you found this, please don't use it. I'm sorry. I just couldn't do it myself." I just sat there staring at it. My daughter was playing in the next room, humming to herself, and I felt this weird wave of guilt, like I brought something into our car that shouldn't be there. I checked the car seat again, this time really looking at it. It didn't look damaged, but now every scratch and scuff made me feel sick. I thought about calling the woman who sold it to me, but her name wasn't the same as the one signed at the bottom of the letter. The signature said, "Emily." I read the marketplace messages again just to make sure. Nope, Allison. Maybe she'd gotten it from someone else. Maybe she didn't know, or maybe she did and just didn't care. I decided to message her anyway. I said, "Hey, I bought the car seat last week, and I found something inside that's kind of concerning. Can we talk?" No reply. I waited a few hours, tried again. Nothing. I checked her profile, and it was gone. Deleted. At that point, I felt like the car seat was cursed for something. I couldn't just throw it out without feeling wrong about it, but I couldn't keep it either. The next day, I took it out of my car and put it in the garage. I wrapped the letter in a plastic bag and kept it separate. For a while, I just left both there, trying to decide what to do. A few nights later, I woke up around 2 a.m. to this weird noise outside. It sounded like something falling over. I looked out the window and saw movement near my driveway. I grabbed my phone flashlight and peeked through the blinds. There was a woman standing next to my garbage bins. She wasn't doing anything, just standing there, staring toward the garage. I couldn't see her face clearly, but she had long blonde hair, same build as the woman I'd bought the seat from. I froze. She didn't move for a solid minute, then walked off down the street. The next morning, I went straight to the garage. The car seat had been moved. Not far, but it wasn't where I left it. The letter, though, it was gone. I searched everywhere, but it wasn't there. I don't know if it was the same woman or if I imagined it, but I haven't seen her since. I ended up taking the car seat to the recycling center a few towns over just to get it out of my house. I told them it was damaged and unsafe. They didn't ask questions. I bought a new one the next day, brand new, straight from the store. Sometimes when I'm driving, I catch Maddie in the rearview mirror and think about that letter. About the way it started. If you're reading this, I guess someone else owns this seat now. I wonder if Emily ever found peace, or if something was just her way of trying to let go. Either way, I'll never buy a used car seat again. And I still check the garage door twice before going to bed. I was moving into a new place when this happened, and honestly, I was broke. Not can't eat broke, but the kind where you start doing math in your head before buying milk. I'd already blown half my budget on the deposit, and all I had for a bed was this old air mattress that squeaked every time I moved. After 1 week of sleeping on that thing, I knew I needed an upgrade. I didn't care if it was used, as long as it didn't deflate in the middle of the night, so I started scrolling through Marketplace and OfferUp looking for a decent mattress. Most of them were gross, like clearly stained or folded in half in someone's garage. But then I found one that looked perfect. The post said barely used queen mattress, less than 6 months old, super clean, smoke-free home. The photo showed it standing upright against a wall, spotless, with tags still attached. The seller's name was Nate. The price was $120, way cheaper than buying new. I messaged him right away. He replied in seconds, said it was still available, and that I could come see it that evening. He said he'd help load it if I brought a truck. When I got there, it was just after sunset. He lived in a small one-story house at the end of a quiet street. The porch light was on, and the mattress was already outside, leaning against the railing, wrapped in plastic. Nate came out wearing gloves and one of those paper masks like you'd wear painting a room. I remember thinking it was weird, but maybe he just didn't want to deal with dust. He seemed nice enough, though, talkative, polite. He said he was moving across town and getting rid of a bunch of stuff. I asked why he was selling something that looked new, and he said didn't fit in the new frame. Fair enough. I gave him $120 cash, and he helped me load it up. I drove home happy, feeling like I had scored a deal. When I got it into my bedroom, I noticed the plastic wrap wasn't sealed. It was just tucked around the edges. I figured maybe he rewrapped it to keep it clean. I cut it open and let it expand a bit before putting sheets on. That night, I finally slept through without sinking into the floor. It was firm, comfortable, and didn't smell weird like some used ones do. Everything seemed perfect. A few days later, while I was changing the sheets, I noticed something under the corner of the mattress. A sticker, like a shipping label. It was half torn off, but I could still make out parts of it. It said return authorization, MedEquip Center, Cleveland. Oh. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe the mattress was shipped from some distribution warehouse. But then I saw the smaller print below that said category, long-term care support surface. That didn't sound like something for normal use. I Googled it. Turns out, support surface is what they call medical mattresses, like the kind used in hospitals or nursing homes for patients who can't move much. Some of them have special pressure sensors or internal air systems to prevent bed sores. Now I was freaked out. I checked the sides again and noticed faint outlines of where wires or tubing might have been attached at some point, small holes covered with plugs. It hit me that I'd been sleeping on a hospital bed mattress. I tried messaging Nate again, but his profile was gone. Completely deleted. I searched for the same photos on other listings, but nothing. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I moved, I imagined all the places that mattress could have been. A hospital. A hospice center. Who knows? The word long-term care echoed in my head all night. The next morning, I decided to check the underside again, just to be sure. I lifted it up and saw another tag stapled into the fabric. It said, property of MedEquip Rentals, not for resale. That's when I got that cold, sinking feeling in my stomach. Someone had sold me a mattress they weren't supposed to even own. I called the number listed on the tag. A woman answered, said she was from the return center. I told her I'd bought a mattress with their label still attached. She immediately sounded concerned and asked for the serial number on the tag. I gave it to her. There was a pause, and then she said, "Can you tell me where you purchased it?" I told her I got it from a guy on Marketplace named Nate, but his account was gone. She sighed and said, "That mattress was supposed to be decommissioned. It came from a medical facility. It's not meant for residential use." I asked what that meant exactly, and she said, "It may have been used by patients with infectious conditions. It should have been sanitized and destroyed, not resold." I went quiet. She told me to arrange a pickup and dispose of it properly. She said they'd send a team to come get it within a couple days. After hanging up, I stripped the bed completely and moved it out of my room. I slept on the couch that night, wrapped in a blanket like a burrito. I couldn't stop thinking about it. 2 days later, a white van pulled up outside with the same company logo on the side. 2 guys got out wearing gloves and masks. They didn't say much, just confirmed the serial number, wrapped the mattress in thick plastic, and carried it out. One of them said, "You're not the first person this has happened to." I asked what he meant, and he said sometimes people steal these from return centers or disposal facilities and resell them. They look new, but they're not safe. He said most of them come from hospitals or nursing homes after being used by multiple patients. When they left, I just stood there staring at the empty spot where it had been. It's a weird feeling, realizing something you've been sleeping on could belong to someone who didn't even make it. I tried searching the company again later, and sure enough, there were online reports about stolen medical mattresses popping up for sale under barely used listings. Same kind of story. The creepiest part, a week later I saw a new Marketplace post from a different seller in my area. Same photos. Same description. Barely used queen mattress, smoke-free home. It wasn't Nate's name this time. The seller was Aaron, but the mattress was identical. Even the pattern on the fabric matched. I didn't message him. I reported the listing instead. Now, I buy all my stuff in person from actual stores, even if it's cheap. I'd rather sleep on the floor than risk waking up wondering who had my mattress before me. Every once in a while, though, when I drive past that old neighborhood where I bought it, I can't help thinking about that porch, that house, and the guy in the mask who said, didn't fit in the new frame. I don't know what was worse, that he lied, or that he probably knew exactly where it came from. I'm not really the type to buy used jewelry. I don't know why, but it just feels personal, like wearing someone else's history on your hand. But I got caught up looking at Marketplace one night because I wanted to get my girlfriend something nice for our anniversary without totally wrecking my bank account. She loves vintage stuff, old rings, lockets, those kinds of things. I was scrolling through random listings when this one caught my eye. It was a gold ring with a small emerald in the center, shaped like a leaf. The caption said, Vintage Emerald Ring, Family Piece, $180 OBO. The photos looked professional, honestly too nice for Marketplace. The ring was sitting on a velvet cloth with good lighting, like a catalog image. The seller's name was Ben. His profile said he was local, maybe 10 miles away. He didn't have many posts, just a couple listings for tools and what looked like random house stuff. I messaged him, said the ring looked beautiful, and asked if he still had it. He replied almost instantly, yeah, it's still available. I can do $150 if you can pick it up today. That was a big drop for no reason, but I figured maybe he just wanted to get rid of it. I told him I couldn't make it that night, maybe the next day. He said okay, but then an hour later he messaged again, $140 if you can come tonight. I told him again I couldn't. By the next morning, there were 3 new messages from him. Still interested. I can do $120 today. I'd rather go to someone who will appreciate it. At this point, I was curious. Either he was desperate for cash, or there was something shady going on. I asked if he could meet at a cafe or something public. He said, no, I'd rather do it at my place so you can see the ring in person with proper lighting. I said I wasn't comfortable with that, and he replied, totally understand. But it's a safe neighborhood. My mom's home too, if that helps. Weird thing to add, right? I told him I'd think about it. A few hours later, he dropped the price again. Okay, $100 flat if you pick it up before 8. At that point, I figured if it was a scam, at least it wasn't an expensive one. I agreed and asked for the address. He sent it, just a normal suburban area about 15 minutes away. When I got there, the house looked fine. Not sketchy, not run down. Lights on, car in the driveway. I texted him that I'd arrived, and he said, just come to the back door, front one sticks. That made me hesitate, but I didn't want to overthink it. I walked around to the side, and sure enough, the back door opened before I could even knock. Ben was standing there, mid-30s maybe, tall, a little unkempt. He smiled too wide. You're here for the ring. He led me into the kitchen. The whole house smelled faintly like something burnt, like old candles and dust. The counter was cluttered with stuff. Mail, a coffee mug, some kind of perfume bottle. He pulled the ring out of his pocket and set it down carefully on a napkin. It was gorgeous. The emerald caught the light perfectly, and the band had little engravings along the side. It looked old, but well cared for. He said, family heirloom. Been in my family for decades. My ex used to wear it, but I think it's time to let it go. That word ex stuck out. I asked, oh, so it's not actually yours? He laughed a little too loudly. Well, technically it was hers, but she doesn't want it anymore. I nodded slowly. You sure she's okay with you selling it? He paused for a second and said, yeah, she said I could. She's out of the picture anyway. He handed me the ring so I could look closer. The engraving inside the band caught my attention. It said E+A. I asked what it stood for. He said, my grandparents' initials. It felt off, but I didn't want to push it. I gave him the $100 and left. That night, I decided to clean the ring before wrapping it. While I was wiping it down, I noticed something weird. There was another engraving under the initials, smaller, almost faded. Always. It felt strange, like something someone would give a partner, not a family heirloom. Out of curiosity, I looked up vintage emerald leaf ring online. After a few minutes of scrolling, I found the exact same one, same shape, same engravings, on an Etsy listing from 2 years ago. The shop had sold it already, but the photos matched perfectly. The seller's name on the old listing was Amy Ull. The initials in the ring, E+A. I clicked her profile. She was local, and one of her public posts was from a few months ago, a photo of her wearing that exact ring with a caption, "He picked this out for me." I went back to Marketplace and searched Ben. Nothing came up. His profile was gone. Now I was stuck with this ring that obviously wasn't his to sell. I debated messaging her, but it felt awkward. What if they broke up badly? What if she didn't want it back? Eventually, curiosity won. I found her business email through her Etsy shop and sent a short message. "Hey, I think I may have bought something that belongs to you. A gold ring with an emerald leaf pattern. Bought it from a guy named Ben." She replied the next morning. Her message said, "Oh my God, please tell me you're not joking." I told her I wasn't and attached a photo of the ring. She confirmed it was hers. She said she and Ben had dated for a couple of years, but when they broke up, he refused to give back some of her stuff. She filed a police report months ago, but never got anything back. She asked if she could meet me to get it. I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop later that day. When she showed up, she looked nervous but relieved. I handed her the ring, and she almost started crying. She thanked me like 10 times and said, "He told me he pawned it." She offered to pay me back the $100, but I told her to keep it. Before she left, she said something that stuck with me. "You're lucky you didn't go there at night. He's not stable. That's why I left." After she left, I sat in my car for a while, just thinking about how close I'd been to walking into a situation I didn't understand. You know that feeling when you think you've scored a great deal, but later it just feels wrong? That's exactly what this story is. I didn't do anything illegal, technically, but I still think about it more than I should. I used to go to storage auctions on weekends. It wasn't a big operation or anything, just a hobby. I'd buy abandoned units, sort through them, sell what I could on Marketplace or eBay. Sometimes you get gold, old records, tools, vintage clothes, but most of the time it was junk. One Saturday, I bought this small storage unit for $60. Nobody else really wanted it. From the outside, it looked like someone's old personal stuff. Boxes, a dresser, a few pieces of furniture. I figured maybe I could make a bit reselling the dresser alone. When I started going through it, it felt different from the usual junk units. Everything was packed carefully. Clothes folded, boxes labeled. One said winter, another said photos and keepsakes. I almost never find boxes like that. People usually just dump stuff and go. I opened the photos and keepsakes one out of curiosity. Inside were dozens of old photo albums, loose pictures, and a few framed portraits. Family stuff, a woman, a man, 2 little kids. I guess they were from the late 90s or early 2000s based on the clothes and hairstyles. There were wedding pictures too, and one of the woman holding a baby in a hospital bed. Normally, I would just toss that kind of stuff aside. Photos don't sell, and they're too personal to keep. But these ones were actually kind of beautiful. The photos were professionally done, soft lighting, warm colors. The people looked happy. Still, I wasn't keeping them. I stacked the albums aside and focused on the dresser. It was in decent shape, so I listed it online for $100. A woman bought it that same day. After that, I didn't think about the photos again until maybe a month later when I was trying to clear out leftover stuff from the same unit. I found that same box again, half buried behind some blankets. I figured maybe people who buy vintage decor might want old frames, so I decided to list the entire box as vintage family photos, $20 for the lot. I know how that sounds, but people actually buy old photos sometimes. They use them for art projects or decor in antique shops. Within a day, a guy messaged me saying he collected old photos for restoration projects. He offered $25 and picked them up the next morning. Easy sale. That should have been the end of it. About 6 months later, I got a Facebook message from a woman named Carolyn. I didn't recognize the name, but the message started with, "You don't know me, but I think you sold something that belongs to me." That made me pause. She said she read one of my old Marketplace listings and recognized the box from the photos. She described it perfectly, white plastic bin, handwriting on the side that said, "Photos and keepsakes." She said, "Those are my family photos. My husband sold our storage unit while I was in the hospital last year. I had no idea until it was gone." My heart sank. I told her I didn't have the photos anymore, that I'd sold them months ago. She asked if I knew who bought them. I said no, just some guy who said he collected them. I didn't even have his last name anymore because the messages had expired. She asked if I'd looked through them. I said I had a little. She asked, "Did you see any from a wedding or a little girl in a blue dress?" I said yes. She replied, "That's my daughter. She died when she was 3. I didn't know what to say. I just sat staring at my phone for a while. Then I said I'd try to help her find them, even though I had no idea how. She sent me photos of the same albums, the same frames. She said she'd been trying to track them down for months, contacting every buyer who'd ever been listed on that storage auction. I was the first person who actually responded. We talked for a while, and she told me the whole story. Her husband and she had been separated, but they were still legally married. She'd been in a hospital for a few months after surgery, and during that time, he stopped paying for their storage unit. Then he sold everything in it for quick cash before disappearing. She said he didn't even tell her until after she got home and asked where her stuff was. All her daughter's baby photos, her wedding pictures, her parents' things, gone. I told her I felt horrible, that I didn't know the story when I sold the box. I described the guy who bought it, but it wasn't much help. Just mid-40s, bald, glasses, black pickup truck. Could have been anyone. She asked if she could post about it online using my listing screenshots. I said of course. For weeks after that, I kept checking in with her. Every time I did, she said no luck. No one had seen the photos. Then one night, she sent me a message at like midnight. Just said, "I found them." She'd been scrolling through a local antiques Facebook group when she saw someone selling vintage family portraits for framing practice. The photos were hers. She recognized the same picture of her daughter in the blue dress. She messaged the seller and arranged to meet. She said when she got there, the man acted confused, claimed he didn't know they were personal. She showed him proof and offered to pay him whatever he wanted just to get them back. He gave them to her for free once he saw her crying. She messaged me later that week again and said, "I have them all now. Every last one." Then she said something that stuck with me. "It feels like getting my family back, even just in pictures." After that, I stopped buying storage units for a while. It didn't feel right anymore. Every box I opened after that, I couldn't help thinking about who it used to belong to. A few months later, Carolyn sent me one last message. She said she'd been putting the photos back into albums and repairing the torn ones. She attached a picture of one of the albums sitting open on her kitchen table, full of smiling faces. She wrote, "If you hadn't answered me, I never would have found them." I didn't really know what to reply, so I just said, "I'm glad they're home." I still do small reselling stuff now and then, but whenever I find old photos, I don't sell them anymore. I keep them in a box marked return if possible. Sometimes I even post them online just in case someone recognizes a face. You never really think about how much people leave behind until you're holding their memories in your hands.